Greetings and welcome to Your Place on the River, a podcast brought to you by Carriage Kia of Woodstock, Georgia, and featuring Chattahoochee Nature Center, where our mission is to connect people with nature. CNC is a private, nonprofit 501c3 organization supported by our members, community at large, and listeners like you. To learn more about the Chattahoochee Nature Center, visit chatnaturecenter.org. To comment on this podcast, tweet us at CNC Nature and use hashtag YPOTR. I'm Larry Stevens, a naturalist here at Chattahoochee Nature Center, joined by our co-host, Scott Tracy, our intrepid field guide. Hey, Scott.
Well, hey, Larry. Thanks for letting me inside again today.
We're not going to keep you inside for long.
I know, I got to get back out there. But it's just been another lovely day in awe of the majesty of the CNC.
That's right.
I saw a snapping turtle today.
Cool. I went out and connected with nature.
Oh, what'd you do? You just connected. You just plugged
in. I just connected. I went in there and took a deep breath, and I listened.
Love it.
Yeah. Today we'll meet our member and visitor engagement director, learn about our wonderful nature exchange, and be further educated on one of my favorite subjects, snakes.
Woo!
Okay, Scott, who are we meeting first? What can you tell us about her?
Today we are talking with Farah McIntyre. As we said, her title is the Member and Visitor Engagement Director. And so she's just here and available for all of our members and guests, and takes care of their needs, and takes care of our fantastic Discovery Center, which we'll learn a little bit more about today. So how you doing, Farah? Welcome.
I am doing well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
First, the butterfly encounter.
Yes, the butterfly encounter is extremely popular.
People always have a lot of questions about that.
What kind of questions do they have?
Well, I hear a lot of where these butterflies come from.
Oh, I get them from a butterfly farm in Kentucky, and we get them shipped in. And then they come in during the butterfly encounter exhibit time. I get a shipment every week, and then we put them out there.
Freshen it up.
Yep.
But there's some caveats there, right? Those can't be released into our area.
Correct. So we have a very strict permit through the USDA, because in order for us to have these butterflies in our encounter and show them and everything, we have a permit via the USDA, and it stipulates very strictly that these butterflies, we're allowed to show these butterflies. It also is very strict about where you import them from. Just because we have the permit doesn't mean I can just get butterflies from Washington State, for example. You have to stipulate what states you're going to get them from. So right now it's Kentucky, South Carolina, and Florida, because that's where our previous butterfly suppliers were from. But my butterfly supplier right now is from Kentucky. And because they weren't butterflies that were grown on our property, on CNC property, we cannot release them, or we can't accidentally have one escape. So we have like an entry vestibule, an exit vestibule where people will enter, and then we check them to make sure they don't have any butterfly, strays on them before they exit, because the USDA is really strict about that.
I've worked at, I always have them pirouette for them.
Yes.
If you got some hitchhikers, somebody trying to bust out of the slammer there.
Hitchhikers, that was the word. Yes, we have them twirl around and do this thing.
Yeah, these ecological laws, as we've talked about with Henning recently, is they've got a reason for being strict.
Yes.
Trying to preserve and protect and all that. So
we don't want accidentally to have one of these butterflies from Kentucky that happens to have some weird pathogen that then gets out onto our property, and then it becomes kind of an invasive species, because it's spreading the pathogen to the rest of these native butterflies, because we do have wild butterflies out on our property all the time during the summer as well.
Butterfly garden.
Yeah, and so when I apply for the permit with the USDA, I actually have to send them pictures of every single part of the butterfly encounter to show them we are doing everything that we can to do that, and then they grant us the permit. So
sweet.
And a butterfly-related question is, I know our VSAs take lots of calls for wildlife and people who bring in injured animals coming by wildlife.
Yes.
And I think you told me sometimes some people come and even had butterflies that they want to see if they can get them rehabilitated.
Yes, I actually took that call, I think a couple weeks ago, where there was a very nice young lady that was calling saying that she rescued a butterfly from a cardinal that was that got it and was trying to eat it.
Poor cardinal.
And so she rescued the butterfly. And what she was telling me, she said, I put the butterfly in my screened-in porch. I put out some nectar, like, sugar water, basically, kind of. And then also just regular water. And she said, that I'm going to do that. Is there anything else I can do? Can I bring the butterfly in to get rehabbed? And I told her, no, unfortunately not. We don't rehab butterflies, but it sounds like you did everything for this butterfly. And it sounds like the butterfly is well taken care of and will, just hang out in your screen porch for a little bit.
Right. Probably should just leave it, though.
Yes, exactly.
Butterflies really only live for like 3-4 weeks.
They really do. Yeah, exactly.
And we denied that cardinal its meal.
Who also had a mouth, yeah. Yeah.
We mentioned, it's seasonal exhibits in the butterfly counter, and then there's Enchanted Woodland.
Oh, yes. Enchanted Woodland Wonders is in the wintertime, and that is fairy houses and gnome homes out on a couple of our trails. And it is extremely popular as well because it's so cute to have like little kids go out there and even adults go out there and look for the fairy houses and be amazed by what our, volunteer fairy house architects did.
Yeah, how do we get the fairy houses and gnome homes?
We have an application that we release on our website, and then we do some social media posts about it, and we do a call for architects for the butterfly houses. So the Enchanted Woodland Trail houses, anybody that wants to make a fairy house or gnome home, they just fill out an application, and then I send them all the information about when and where to drop off the house. And they have some guidelines, but mostly the biggest guideline really is that it's made with the most natural materials as possible.
And I remember when we first started this, and we had people building their fairy houses out of cardboard and Elmer's glue.
Yeah, they
didn't
fell
stand
apart.
up very well against the first rain.
No, because our exhibit is almost 3 months long. And it really needs to stand up. And it's outside. And it needs to stand up to everything. Because we have had everything. We've had snow, we've had wind, we'd have rain. We haven't had hail.
We have children grabbing hold of
Children grabbing pieces. So we've learned how to communicate that to architects, too, about how to weatherproof their house. And then they also will come and check on their houses throughout the exhibit.
Yeah. And
sometimes trees will fall on them, too. But there's
that
not much
did
you can do about
happen. That did happen. It was a staff member's house, but she was still upset about it.
Of course.
Right.
Well,
it was
she
a
should-
very cute house.
Well, she should be. Now, I always have fun when I ask the kids if they know the difference between yes'm and gnome, and they give me
No. Good one. Well, so
That's a good joke.
do you have any other new exhibits in the works? You kind of briefly mentioned possibly doing audio tours or
Yes.
maybe something else.
That, and then also right before we started recording, I was talking about the trail guides because we used to have these laminated trail guides for every single trail on our property, and they really needed a refresh, and that has been put on the back burner a little bit, but I do want to bring that back because then it's more of just when the visitor comes in, and even members could borrow them or take them. When the member or visitor comes in, if they're like, well, I know stuff, but can I just find out more while walking around the trail on my own? And that's what the trail guides are. They're for self-guided visits where you don't have a guide, but you do want to walk the trail and be, pointed out things that to note. So those trail guides are really awesome. They'll say, oh, look for this on this trail, or especially the wetlands trail is really great because all of the plant diversity down there is great with all the pitcher plants and everything, and that is cool. That's my favorite trail, personally.
It's a lot of unusual plants.
Exactly.
The
And
long longleaf pine.
the self-guided trail guides help with that because sometimes you're walking there and you don't notice, but the self-guided trail guide is kind of like having another person with you, and I want to revamp those probably this summer.
We have guided tours like on the weekends.
We
docents.
do.
We have docents.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they
cool.
do that too as well. And they're really
Good.
cool, and everybody always loves them.
Yeah. And we also we can't leave without mentioning the retail area.
Oh, yes. I also oversee the retail, the nature store is what we call it. And it's really cool. My retail manager, Kim, does a great job of getting in really unique things, but also just nature-y items and cool t-shirts that you really can't find anywhere else that have our name on them as well, which is really cool. People like them, and magnets and everything, and a lot of children's books and adult books that are unique and different.
Yeah.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Farah. Keep up the
Thank
good
you
work.
for having me.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, that was great visiting with Farah, and now we have somebody else.
Yeah, she answered a lot of my questions. Man, I forgot to ask about that one thing, Nature Exchange.
Yeah, tucked away downstairs in the Discovery
Disco Center. Yeah.
So,
All right.
I've got a fix for that.
You do?
Yeah, we brought Lori Watterson.
Oh, hey, Lori.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. Welcome from
Lori's
the
one of our
Exchange.
nature exchange naturalists. Yeah, and she used to work here as school program, but now she focuses on the nature exchange.
Yes, I do.
Can you tell the folks at home what a nature exchange is?
The Nature Exchange is a trading post for nature items. So ideally, you bring in an item from nature from anywhere except our property, anywhere around the world, as long as it's legal to have it in your possession. You bring it in, and we give you points for it. And then you can use those points to buy other things that we have in the Nature Exchange, like bones, seashells, fossils, rocks, minerals,
Bones.
plant parts, animal parts. Yep.
Yeah, not living plant or animals, really, but
No,
yeah.
it's got to be already deceased.
Yeah, I can't be the one behind it either.
But so it's a franchise, though, and I was interested to learn that. So we didn't create it here.
So the Nature Exchange was started by a museum called Science North in Ontario, Canada, about between 20 to 30 years ago. After they developed their program, they turned it into a franchise for other zoos, museums, nature centers to buy. And so back in 2009, that's what we did. We bought a franchise, and we've had the Nature Exchange going ever since.
Cool.
We're about the 11th.
One of 11, or? Okay.
Yeah, there's about
Is that North America or worldwide?
It's in Canada and North America. So there are 2 or 3 in Canada. There's about 8 west of the Mississippi, and then the Chattahoochee Nature Center and Roper Mountain in Greenville are the only 2 in the United States east of the Mississippi.
Okay.
Business is booming, though.
It sure is.
It's always busy down there.
What's involved in the trading? And it's for open to all ages, right?
It is. Yes, we have primarily kids, maybe till about 14, 15, and then we also have a lot of adults, including a lot of the staff here at the Nature Center are traders.
Cute. And how do you determine the points? Is it tied to the fiat system?
It depends. It depends on what it is, where it's from, how big or small that it is, the quality of it.
Yes.
So different factors. If it's clean.
Ah, yes. Yeah, we prefer the things clean when brought
Yes.
to us.
Clean and dry.
Clean.
Lori told me the number one rule is
The number one rule in the Nature Exchange is that if you don't want to smell it or touch it, neither do we.
That's a great rule.
rules,
Yes.
words to live by.
Yeah, my dog doesn't abide by that one. So you said that these items come from all over the world, but a lot of them are kind of local items people bring in just from around this area, and you said a lot of them are donated as well.
Yes, so we do have a lot of items that come in from our traders. A lot of them bring rocks and minerals in from Georgia.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of the seashells come from our traders who go on vacation, either to the Gulf or to the Atlantic.
Yeah.
But then in addition to that, and of course just collecting locally, plants and animal parts, things like that, we will also from time to time get in donations, usually from family members of someone who was a collector of something, say seashells or rocks. And after that person has passed away, the family really doesn't want the collection, so they will donate it to us. So we've gotten a lot of items from donations. And then sometimes we actually do buy some items, mostly minerals and seashells, just to make sure we have enough stock for trading, because we can't necessarily trade out every single thing that a trader will bring in.
Right.
If it's a leaf or a flower, it's certainly not going to last. So
Yeah.
we have different things that we do to keep our stock
Sure.
fresh
And interesting.
and interesting. Mhm.
Yeah. 'cause
How do you
some-
determine the value of an item that's brought in?
It depends on the quality, the size, how clean it is. It also depends on what it looks like point value wise from our points manual. So we do have a points manual to go
Yeah, guide.
by.
And that's provided by the,
That's provided by Science North,
yeah.
who also provides our database for our trader members.
So what I was going to ask next is a lot of these kids, they bring in, as we said, kind of just little flowers or little rocks or whatever that we can't really hold on to because we just have way too many pieces of gravel to trade to sitting on the shelves to be traded. But more importantly, when they bring in any kind of item, you guys are always kind of probing them to see what they might know about it. And
Right. So when someone comes in with a trade, we will ask them what it is and where they found it. Sometimes they don't know what they have, so we'll help them to try to identify it. We do have a resource library with field guides and other books on different nature subjects.
Cool.
And skulls identification, things like that.
I've certainly looked through it myself.
And we'll
Yeah.
also use the internet to help us to figure out what they've got.
Yeah.
And then also, in addition to the item being worth points itself, if the child has a lot of knowledge about that item, they can earn knowledge points. If they do a little report about it, or sometimes like a project, say different types of minerals or different types of leaves that they've done maybe on a poster board and identified, all the different leaves and either took photographs or drawings, we'll give them points for that project or that report, or just the knowledge that they have in their head.
And there are other ways that traders can get points besides turning, and it's a limit of 3 per trade, correct?
Yes, so
But
3
there are-
trades per person per day.
But there are other ways they can earn points, right?
There are. So a lot of people don't know about the Nature Exchange. So first timers can always do our scavenger hunt, which we have for all traders. It changes out every month, and it's questions with answers found on our grounds. And if they finish it, they get 100 points to spend in the Nature Exchange. They can spend it right then, or they can create an account and save their points and maybe start bringing in items to increase the amount of points that they have in their account.
Right.
You can be an established trader and still earn points too at the scavenger hunt, can't you?
Absolutely. And then we also have our reading rewards program.
That's my favorite.
So you can read at home for points. Any kind of reading is worth 1 point per minute. But then if it's anything about science or nature, it's worth 2 points a minute. So that's a great way for traders to earn points while they're at home or over a break, or when the weather isn't nice enough to come to the nature center.
Yeah.
They can be earning points at home.
Yeah.
We also have quarterly activities that we do in the fall and the spring that they can earn different points as well. Our Eco Tinker, our Naturally Artistic, and our Double Vision for Kids contest. So for completing those things, the rewards are points that can be added to their account. And if you come in during your birthday month, you get 500 points every year.
Wow. Okay, cool.
So a lot of different ways
But
to
you
earn
have to make
points.
an appearance to get that birthday one.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to come in person during your birthday month.
Right. Well, I love all the positive incentivization for these kids to be gaining knowledge. And I know a lot of them, I'm around and about down there a lot. I know the kids come in and that's like the whole reason that they're here today, and they're just so stoked about it. And that's awesome.
And some of them come in there to do some hardcore haggling with you, with our naturals, right?
We do have a couple of traders who do like to haggle over points.
But then on the other side, you said that we have some sort of less socially adjusted kids coming in, because some of them are so young. So you told me it's a great opportunity for them to kind of come out of their shell and
Right.
gain social skills.
It is.
I love
not
that.
only do they get to connect with nature by looking for items when they're out on walks or even in their backyards, but they do learn social skills, how to talk to other adults. Some of them are really shy, so if we can get them talking about their items and they forget about how shy they are, they'll really open up. And that's happened, I've noticed, with quite a few of our traders over time. They become comfortable with us because it's the same few of us that are naturalists in the Nature Exchange. So we know them by name, which is great. They know us. And then, they are reading. So kids who haven't really been avid readers have become readers just to earn points, which their moms love. They have to tally up the points of the items that they want to buy. So they're using math skills, and they learn how to do research or to use a field guide. So whether they realize it or not, they're learning a lot of skills just in addition to the actual trading of the items.
Well, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Lori.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you in the Nature Exchange.
All right, come on down.
I got some smelly, wet stuff to bring.
But they taste good.
It does taste good. Oh, man.
Well, that was useful to learn. Now, shifting directions, let's hear from our wildlife technician, Jeremy Maneyapanda, who's going to tell us about the joys of snakes.
Oh, boy.
Yippee!
Woo. Me and Larry are here with Jeremy Maneyapanda, our good friend, as per usual. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, being as this is my favorite animal, snakes.
Yeah!
Legless lizards. Just kidding, I know they're different. I know they're different. Jeremy, you can tell us why. We won't get into too much lizard stuff. But what's the difference between a snake and a legless lizard anyway?
Real quick. Legless lizards are lizards that do not have legs. So they look like snakes. But the easiest way to tell a legless lizard from a snake is that legless lizards have eyelids. They can close their eyes.
Wow.
Whereas a snake does have an eyelid, but it's transparent and it stays open all the time. They don't close their eyes ever.
They're always watching you.
Yes.
And that's why when we check sheds on our snakes when they shed, we always check for the eye cap being on there, right?
So the eye cap on a snake is a scale, just like the scales on the rest of their body. And when they shed that scale also. And it becomes opaque. It's something we call being blue because it has a whitish blue hue to it. And it can be very problematic if the snake retains that. It can cause the eye to be injured and damaged, and it may go blind because of it. So all the snakes in our care, when they shed, we need to make sure that they do shed that eye cap.
Yeah, and when their eyes turn that milky kind of blue, that's when we know they're about to shed.
Correct,
right?
yeah. So what happens is as snakes grow, their outer layer of skin is shed off to a fresh, healthy lower layer of skin. A thin layer of fluid gets between those two layers when they're ready to shed, which is what gives that milky coloration. And maybe 2, 3, 4 days before they shed, it's resorbed. So you'll see a snake with kind of that milky coloration in their eye, and then about 2 or 3 days later, it disappears. Or not 2 or 3, 2 to 3 days before it sheds, it disappears, and then they shed. So we could almost predict, like, with a calendar, like when we first see the blue to when we see that eye clear up, when it's going to actually clear up.
Cool.
And speaking of snakes in our care, Jeremy had the great pleasure of bringing me one of our beautiful albino corn snakes today.
Yeah, so I brought one of the snakes that we received as a donation from someone who moved to the state of Georgia with this corn snake. It was a captive bred snake, completely healthy. He was actually a very good snake owner. But in the state of Georgia, you cannot keep any native species as pets, regardless of their origin.
Isn't that true?
Well, that's not really. No,
Okay.
not really.
Okay.
there's certain things you can do with venomous snakes that you can't do with non-venomous, which is kind of morose. But this guy here, like I said, he was totally healthy. The owner was very conscientious. He didn't realize that in Georgia you couldn't keep this species, and when he found out, he called the Department of Natural Resources. They pointed him to us, and we were able to add him to our collection. So we use him as an education animal. He's very handleable, very friendly, as you can see, Scott.
Yeah.
And you mentioned venomous versus non-venomous, so let's make the distinction first between poisonous and venomous.
Yeah, this is one of our pet peeves.
Yeah.
So snakes are not poisonous. The simple way to remember this, for whatever it's worth, is that if you eat it and you die, it's poisonous. And if it eats you or if you bite it and it dies, start over. If you bite it and you die, it's poisonous. If it bites you and you die, it's venomous. Yeah. Venomous has to be actively inflicted into the...
Like a yellow jacket stinger.
Correct.
Not just snakes.
Whereas a mushroom that you might eat that isn't non-toxic, that's poisonous. You're eating it. It's not injecting its venom into you.
Good.
Right.
And Georgia has a bunch of snakes.
Yeah. So surprisingly,
only a few of them are venomous.
Very few of them.
Even fewer live around here. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. We have one of the greatest diversity of snake species of all of the United States. There's only a few states that have more diversity than us, but of those states, we have the lowest relative amount of venomous snakes. And here in the North Georgia area, we actually only have a few. And only a couple that are worth mentioning because the other ones are so secretive and or rare that they really don't get encountered very much at all. They happen to be here, but they live in very secluded areas and are very cryptic, so they're not really seen that often. So there's only a few that we really should even bear mentioning when we talk about snakes in this area because they're the ones that people are going to probably encounter if they encounter a venomous snake.
And I always tell people to just learn what our venomous snakes look like, like the 3 or so that's likely to encounter, and then the rest are good.
That's the trick, though, is that sometimes identifying them can be a little bit complicated for certain people. As we talked about just a little while ago off air here, one of the most harmless and beneficial snakes that we have in our gardens today is so readily and constantly misidentified as a venomous snake, and unfortunately is too often unnecessarily killed because of that. So identifying that is sometimes the biggest hurdle.
Right, and people who do that and then miss out on the benefit derived from that DK's brown snake.
Correct. So, the venomous snakes have an enormous ecological benefit.
Exactly. They all have a critical part of the ecosystem.
Right.
Just present danger to us.
So. And the danger in and of itself isn't even really as imminent as people oftentimes portray.
Sure.
No snake in the United States, no less, is going to actively seek someone out to be aggressive to them. These snakes primarily will try and flee rather than do anything, or just sit totally still and hope you don't see them. That's their two greatest defenses, no ifs, ands, or buts. The vast majority of snake bites occur when the snake is in danger and feels it has no choice but defend itself, and any animal will do that at all. So that's how generally almost every single snake bite occurs, not only here in the United States, but usually worldwide. Is just people unfortunately getting too close to snakes, maybe inadvertently, maybe even purposefully, but putting that snake in harm's way so the snake thinks.
These stories of people seeing a snake going down into a hole and they grab it and try to pull it out.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard so many stories of people seeing a snake and thinking it's a venomous copperhead, but they want to know for sure, so they will try and kill it in order to identify it. You have to get close to them to do that, and you're just putting yourself in harm's way to try and prove a point that doesn't need to be proved.
And some people think that it's real easy to just grab and handle a snake.
Yes.
And they've got these wives' tale rules that their dads told them about how to grab and hold a snake, and they're not going to be as easy to handle as this little guy.
Well, the way I tell a venomous snake from a non-venomous snake is you roll it over on its back and you check, and if it's 2 scales past the cloaca, it's non-venomous.
Well, that's a way. I don't know that I would say that's the best way. No.
You can tell from the shed. No. Okay, but fear of snakes, that's almost a primal fear, I understand. But it can be overcome because yours truly here used to be scared of snakes, and the only good snake is a dead snake. And I've overcome that. And
You want to touch this
now
one?
Yeah, I mean, I've held her before.
Yeah, she's cute. Huh?
Yeah, go away. No, I handle snakes all the time, and there was a time though when I would not have been. I would have had this primal fear.
Yeah, this innate, this instinctual fear.
Instinctual,
It's
yeah.
just an incredible feature of our evolution as humans, because even other primates share the same fear of serpents, of snakes. It's very, very well documented, actually. Some of the other ape species just going into sheer panic.
They go ape.
They do go ape at the sheer sight of a snake. So it's not as if it's a learned hatred. It is an instinctual thing, but like you said, it's overcomable. One of the things,
a lot of effort.
one of the things that, Larry, you know this firsthand, that our naturalists do when we have snakes with groups that are here to learn is that we impress upon them these are not dangerous animals. They're not slimy. They're not, evil. Oftentimes we'll get people that have never touched a snake once in their life come up and actually make contact with them.
We do that, and we will rub the
against
skin.
their forearm.
I had a second grade girl when I rubbed the snake against her forearm. She said, "Oh, that's smooth and cool." I said, "Yeah." She says, "It's just like the marble countertop in our kitchen." I said, "Yeah, it's smooth and cool."
Yeah.
So
So I mean, even that misconception that people still think that snakes are slimy, that they're
and it's always fun to tell the kids, "Are snakes slimy?" And then say, "Who raised your hand? Don't raise. Who thinks snakes are not slimy?" And then I said, "Well, is your hair slimy? Are your fingernails slimy?" Guess what? They're all made of the same thing.
Yeah, so this snake is obviously, as all the rest of them, not very slimy, not at all slimy. And she's very curious, just kind of climbing around. That seems to be, to me, whenever I handle snakes, they're pretty curious animals.
yeah. So I mean,
Their tongue is going.
their
it's
tongue, yeah. So
sniffing.
their tongue is used for a sense of smell, which is again bizarre compared to what we use our nose for smell. They use their tongues. They actually have a specialized organ in their mouth, and the tongue, when it goes out and flicks around, it's grabbing air particles, pulling it in its mouth to that organ. It's called the Jacobson's organ, and that analyzes those smells and tells the snake what's going on. So we actually have to use a lot of caution, like if we're handling prey items, so like if we're handling mice or something, we have to wash thoroughly before we handle a snake, because if it smells food, it's going to think it's food.
I washed my hands and forearms before handling.
Very good, Scott.
So,
When I have school groups come here, and I always tell the teacher if I'm going to be showing a snake, because I say, I find out if the adults are going to, when I pull the snake out, I said, when you see me open the box here, y'all leave the room, because I don't want you giving a bad impression to the kids. The kids are cool with the adults.
so
Yeah.
corn snakes are usually very colorful, have, kind of tricolor.
Yeah, an orange and a black and kind
This
of a
one's
red.
kind of just various shades of pink, and you let off saying it's an albino, and that's just a genetic deformity.
Yes, and use that word deformity kind of loosely. There's nothing wrong with this snake. It's just that this snake has specifically been bred to lack the black coloration, the melanin. That's what an albino is.
And if we were to release it in the wild, it would be easy.
It would be easy pickings. It could not camouflage.
And that's
so.
the only reason you use like the word deformity is because it's something that wouldn't allow the snake to live as likely as counterparts.
Yeah, well, I mean, genetic deformities can come in a lot of things. They happen in humans all the time, which makes one person have blue eyes, one person have hazel eyes. This difference in genes and the genes defect, they change. It's not a bad thing. It's not something that's wrong.
Sometimes it ends up serving a better purpose.
Correct.
And then becomes the leading gene.
That's evolution. You just
Yeah.
described evolution. But
Baby.
in this particular snake, it was purposefully bred for this, being it was a pet. It was bought in the pet trade. They want pretty looking snakes, and this snake is a very pretty looking snake. So that's why it's bred for that coloration.
It's pink on top and yellow on bottom. It's pink lemonade.
And it's always fun to ask the kids, we established that it smells with its tongue. It says, so why does it have nostrils? And you have to think a while. So, well, how do you breathe when you've got food in your mouth?
Oh, that's a good one. You know what else smelled when the snake smelled when I pulled it out of the bag. What's that smell that?
So certain snakes, usually the colubrids, like king snakes, corn snakes, constrictors, it's the ones we have here. they do a thing called musking, where they will excrete a hormonal scent. It's possible he's marking you as his now, Scott.
Oh, you're making such a cute couple.
They'll musk when they're alarmed because it's a really pungent smell when they really lay it down. So if a predator were to grab a snake, they'll defend themselves. A non-venomous snake doesn't have any venom to defend itself. They'll oftentimes, I'm going to use the word loosely, but they'll spray this musk, and it is such a pungent odor. It's like a strong, perfumey, not in a good way, odor that it sometimes alarms these predators to let it go. I don't know what it tastes like, but I assume it has a bad taste too. But we smell it. Like when we get rehabilitation snakes that come in for treatment, they regularly will musk all over us, and it's hard to wash off. It sticks around for a while.
Yeah, so it's more of an emitting. Is it like a certain gland that it's emitting through its skin, I suppose?
Not through its skin. It's through its cloaca.
Ah, yes.
Good old cloaca.
The cloaca is the common opening on the south side of the snake for all its excretory and reproductive matters, and they have 2 glands right there that produce this musk. So it comes out, oftentimes a little bit of urates will come out with it too, but it's produced from the cloaca itself. It's not emitted through the skin and the scales and such.
Does it technically have any skin, or is it just scales? I mean, there's skin under the scales?
The skin under the scales, that's correct,
okay.
yes. Yeah. Like when it's after it eats a full meal or even in kind of the bigger parts, you could actually see where the scales are so stretched out, you can see the skin in between.
Yeah, that's true. Because in between the scales, I do see like the very white skin.
They're white, yes. It's usually very white.
Yeah.
All right, and the fact that, so the size of the head versus some of the size of the prey. So tell us about how they're able to eat some prey that's larger than their...
Generally doesn't matter. They can eat big foods. So snakes have a unique skull structure that their jaw is only plastically held in place. It's very, very stretchable. And as such, when they are eating large prey items, sometimes even much larger than the diameter of their body, they can stretch their whole head up and around that. There's actually species of snakes that eat whole eggs. And it doesn't even look real to see the snake stretch out to eat a whole egg. And it gets about halfway down before there's a little process in its spine, a little protuberance that ruptures the eggshell, and then it regurgitates the eggshell, but all the yolk is inside. But I mean, I've seen king snakes here on property eating small bird eggs, not whole bird eggs. And we've seen some of our snakes eat some very large prey items,
Something I tell the kids is they say if a snake were as big as I am, I could put a basketball in my mouth. And some people wish I would.
We're going to test that. Yeah, I think you can. I'm with the kids. I think you can.
Not very nutritious, but so, yeah.
Well, so this snake has been very gentle and sweet to me, but of course we want to encourage all of our listeners not to handle snakes that they are finding out in the wild. Even if you feel like you're pretty confident of what kind of snake it is, if that's the case and it's not a venomous one, you're just going to want to leave it where it is and let it do its thing.
Yeah, just get some observations from it. Like I said, these snakes, I have no interest whatsoever in interacting with you in the wild.
You are not their next meal.
No. You are nothing but a danger to them in their minds.
Precisely.
So just give them the wide berth they deserve, and they're going to be happy. Particularly when spring comes around, we get a lot of snakes that are coming up out of what's called brumation, which is the same thing as hibernation is in mammals. We call it brumation in reptiles, but they've just spent all winter not eating and not drinking and slowing down their metabolism, and now it's getting warm and the sun's out. So they're going to get out in places that you're going to see them on top of rocks, or one of the favorite places for snake to get warm is on a road, because that road just collects that heat and it just radiates off that. And everybody who's been on a road in the summer knows exactly what I'm talking about. These animals are not out to hurt anybody or do anything. They're out there to just get warm, to get their bodies working again and moving again, getting ready for the spring and the summer that's coming up.
I remember several Decembers ago, an example of coming out of brumation it was in December, but the temperatures were up in the 80s. And so here was Christmas time with frogs and snakes and turtles all out. So,
it can be a challenging thing for them, too, because when they come out and then it gets cold again, they're in a little bit of dire straits. They got to get back into someplace warm.
And they've used up energy.
Absolutely, to come back out. they're going to try and hide. They're going to generally stay in the leaf litter under fallen branches and leaves and debris and things of that nature. They're not out in the open without a reason, So in that case, they came out from that brumation because their bodies are telling them it's spring.
Yeah, wake up.
They don't have a calendar and they're...
Yeah.
So you mentioned here earlier to us that we have 2 state-level threatened species, the East Indigo snake, and one of my favorites, the dramatic southern hognose.
Yeah. So those are both protected on the state level. The indigo snake is actually federally protected.
Okay.
It is
Endangered?
It's on the Endangered Species
And
Act.
they're so beautiful.
They're incredible. So they're huge.
Yeah.
It's
gotten
astonishing
the
how
halo
large
feel,
they are. But they get their name indigo snake because they look like they're a very dark blue, like an iridescent sheen that you have to see them in the sun to appreciate them.
But they're both found below the fall line.
That's correct. Right. Yes, we don't see them up in our aspects up
I
here.
want a hog nose myself.
Hognoses are cool because they do just comically, like Scott said, just comically dramatic things. They play dead. If they play dead so intensely, they commit so intensely that they roll over and they open their mouth and they hang their tongue out of their mouth. And if you take your hands and you pick it up and put it on the right side, it immediately reverts back upside down. You cannot get them out of that position when they're playing dead. They have to just finally realize that you are gone before they'll stop rolling over onto their back. It's overly dramatic. It's a tantrum.
I highly
is what it is.
recommend everybody watch some YouTube videos of that for some entertainment.
That's right. Back to venomous snakes. We've already made the point that snakes aren't aggressive toward us. The last resort is for them to go at you. It's just defensive. But what about snake bites? I mean, they're dry bites, and sometimes people do get bitten by a venomous snake.
Yeah, so like far and away, our most common venomous snake we have up here in this region of Georgia is the copperhead. Copperhead's venom is medically significant. So if anybody is ever bitten by a copperhead, which usually, like I said, happens accidentally, person that accidentally steps on one, is reaching in a log pile and there's a snake in there and it sees that giant hand coming towards it or something like that. It's generally not purposeful. If you are bitten, you absolutely seek medical care. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You should absolutely seek medical care. Snake bite.
You're a man.
No, even men. Snake bite fatalities are incredibly uncommon. There's some really incredible statistics about snake bites and how you're far more likely to get struck by lightning and die from that than you are from a snake bite, and far more likely to fall out of bed and die than you are to die from a snake. Like just benign, innocuous things that we do 10 times a day, that we just don't even think about. We just say, okay, this is what life is.
Right. Well, when you're bit by a snake, people typically, seek medical care.
Correct.
And our medical care for snake bites is come a long way.
It's very advanced now. Actually, they've come up with one medical, pharmaceutical treatment for all species of venomous snakes in the United States. So
really?
You don't even need to know what type of snake it is.
I didn't
If
know
you
that.
got bit by a venomous snake that's native to the United States, there's just one anti-venom that the hospitals will administer. How much they administer or if or when they do it is entirely a medical professional aspect. Doctors decide that.
Right.
But
So how advanced we've become. When I was a boy, the thing was to cut an X over each of the, and then suck the blood out.
Oh, that's
those days are gone.
those days are long, long, long gone.
Because everybody who did that is dead.
blood poisoning.
And I was going to say about the copperheads, they're so docile. I know somebody, or, not know them, but one of our guests here one time, their child stepped on a copperhead snake and it didn't rear up and bite them or anything. It just kind of slithered away like, ow.
Same with moccasins. Yeah.
And Larry, you mentioned dry bites. Dry bites are a thing where a snake bites, but it doesn't want to inflict. They actively will pursue. Yeah, we'll try and put that venom in you or not. Dry bites are venom not coming into your body, so those do happen too.
Because it requires a lot of energy
to make that venom.
They're not
Yeah,
really wasting
And they
on
need
a.
it for their prey.
So we talked some about the copperheads. Copperheads are. I'll give you some tips on how to identify. Number one, baby copperheads are telltale. You will never confuse a baby copperhead because the tip of the tail is like a highlighter yellow. It is such a bright fluorescent yellow that your eyes can't go away from it. It is so bright. That is something they use as a lure. Like when they're trying to attract prey, they'll wiggle it and it'll attract something to come, and then they'll be able to eat it.
It's a little worm.
Yeah, exactly. Like they lose that as they become an adult, but adult copperheads, generally we call it, you see the Hershey's Kisses on the side, that they have kind of a bronze pattern and kind of a chocolate brown pattern. And the chocolate brown pattern, if you're looking at a snake from side profile on a copperhead, will look like a Hershey's Kiss, trademark, copyright.
Okay. How about hourglass?
Half an hourglass. There we go.
That's like sands of the time.
That's generally so. I mean, of course, like we were talking about earlier, Scott, there can be some genetic defect that makes that pattern not the same. Mm-hmm. But overall, as a rule of thumb, that's an easy way to tell a copperhead. Don't look at the head shape. There's a lot of old wives' tales about head shapes and slits in the eyes and a pupil design. And some snakes will purposely behave hyper aggressive that are totally harmless. We talked about decay snakes. They're not generally them, but garter snakes or rat snakes, or for example, we were talking about yellow rat snakes earlier. They play the part. They think they're the toughest animal on earth, and they're going to try and back you down with every step they can. Totally harmless. Cannot hurt you if it tried its hardest, but they're going to play that part. So there's a lot of behavioral things that they do to try and keep dangers away from them.
There's a king snake here on the property, and so if they're coiled up, they will shake their tail.
They'll vibrate the tip of their tail.
In the leaves or something like that. To
sound like a rattle on a rattlesnake. Yeah. They're trying to mimic that because they'll use every trick they can. Smart little animals to do this.
And of course, just genetic, like, animal mimicry,
Yeah, like the camouflage snake. And the coral snake. So that
milk snake.
There was an old rhyme that people would say to try and tell the snakes apart. It's fallen out of favor in a lot of scientific methods because particularly coral snakes in other parts of the world, in South America and so forth, don't follow that pattern.
Right.
But we don't see coral snakes here a lot, even though they are native to the state of Georgia and southern Georgia. Yeah.
They're really elusive.
You would have to really, 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 really try to get bit by one of them and bitten by one of them. But they have a serious venom. Yeah. Coral snakes are related to cobras. Yeah. And they have a venom that has that same lineage. So you would have to seek medical care if one of those bit on you, and they'd have to chew on you for a while. And they're tiny little snakes, so to break the skin, they'd really have to, like I said, you'd really have to work in order to get envenomated.
They don't have fangs, right?
They're what we kind of call, they're called rear-fanged. So they don't have like large, hypodermic needle-looking fangs up front, but there's a lot of kind of not ideal ways to try and identify venomous snakes that have passed along from generation to generation to generation. And it's caused some good things, some bad things. Scott, like you mentioned earlier, best thing to do is just not mess with snakes. Like, it's so easy just to let them go on their way and you on yours. If you want to sit there and watch them, absolutely. Great, No need to pick it up, no need to handle it, no need to do anything with it that you don't need to do.
You mentioned the old myth about head shape. If you've ever seen a non-venomous snake drinking, also they'll puff themselves up trying to look tough, and that's counterproductive.
Common water snakes, which live around like the river, they look more venomous than water moccasins, which are venomous because they triangulate their head. It becomes an arrowhead almost looking head because they realize that this bluff works. It doesn't mean it's venomous, but one of the big things that really we want to try to strive with people is that, and I know we've kind of mentioned this a couple times, that all snakes are critical to our environment. They're critical to our ecosystems. We don't have snakes, we don't have ecosystems. That's the truth.
Because they're apex predators.
Because they're integral. There's so many animals that are integral. They prey on animals that need to have population control. They are prey items for animals that need food sources. There's very integral parts. So they shouldn't be removed for any real reason. So often snakes are killed just because people have this innate fear, like we were talking about earlier.
In most cases, you're not going to even notice them.
Yep.
They're there and they're out doing their thing to help us be part of the ecosystem. All right, so now some people say, how do I make my home less snake-friendly? But I want to know, how do I make my home more snake-friendly?
Yeah. Let's cover both of those.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do.
If you wanted to make your home less snake-friendly, probably the biggest thing would be just to keep your home and your outdoor areas around your home orderly. For example, if you have a lot of leaf litter or fallen branches or brush piles or firewood or something like that, This is going to create just the happiest little spot for a snake because it's got humidity, it's got cover, it's got food sources absolutely right there with them, close to them. So generally keeping your home a little more, I'm going to use barren was the word I was going to use, will prevent that from happening. Almost everybody that says they saw a snake, venomous or non-venomous, they see it under their stairs or, like in the yard under the bushes or something like that. It's not just sitting on the patio like hanging out like a like a rabbit might. They're in kind of in reclusive spots. So that's something you could do for sure. Not inviting the prey items for these snakes. So like I happen to know just through some colleagues and some friends, people who keep chickens have a lot of snakes because the chickens eat chicken food and mice love eating chicken food too. And if you have a chicken coop, a lot of times there's mice and the snakes are going to go to where the food is. And if you can prevent the mice from being there by keeping that type of thing more orderly, keeping that food source away, the snakes aren't going to want to be there. There's no reason for them to be.
Of course, eventually they go to the chicken eggs.
Yeah, that's not very common, but I think every single chicken owner on Earth should make that trade-off, that they'll sacrifice an egg or two every month in order to keep rats and rodents away from their homes. So that is a huge trade-off. Even a huge black rat snake is not going to take down a chicken. Right. They will happily go after rodents and what we call vermin, like the things that we don't want there. They're not going to try and kill and eat an adult chicken at all, Right. So it's not a real big trade-off in my book,
Hey, tell me, she's wrapping around a whole lot in different kinds of ways. Do snakes have any sort of method to keep themselves from tying them in a knot?
Yeah, I mean, they don't. No, a snake that ties itself in a knot is in a bad place. It's in a bad shape.
It's a bad snake.
Like, you need to think that inside that snake is all the organs that we have.
Ah, yes.
They exist in those snakes, too. They're not just meat under there.
Right.
So they have lungs and kidneys and livers and spines and spleens, and they have stomachs and intestines, and all that's got to fit into this tube. So if they were to tie themselves in a knot, that would obviously massively damage their biological capabilities.
Sure.
So they just don't want to do that. These guys are constrictors, the corn snakes, so they can pull themselves pretty tight, but they would never pull themselves in a spot where they're just like, oops, I need some help here.
That's one of the things I go with the schools. Kids, they said, are these like worms? They don't have skeletons? And then I show them the snake skeleton.
Yeah.
They've got
a bunch of ribs.
We've got about 30 vertebrae, and they've got more than 100.
We have to utilize a lot of that to our advantage for rehab. Like, for example, if we have to give an injection to a snake because it's got an injury and it needs an antibiotic, where do you give it? There's areas of the body that have less organs that are more muscular, so that's the areas we're going to give the injections to. It's not just close your eyes and stab. There's things specifically in certain places inside them.
Right. You ever seen a snake eat its own tail?
Unfortunately, it happens in real life too. So it happens in captive snakes a lot because
just like boredom.
Yeah. It's almost a neurotic type behavior with an animal that is kind of not being able to figure out what it's supposed to do. So people that keep snakes as pets, sometimes they'll see their snake actually start eating itself. I know that sounds comical almost, but it's actually pretty
they
disturbing.
Can't bite their tail and turn into a wheel.
They don't roll away. No, there's ways that you can get them apart, but it's generally something that's an indicator that you want to try and do something different with your husbandry because
take it on more walks.
Well, rats, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but we're going to have to wrap up here. We can keep chatting away here on the wonderful world of snakes.
Let's end it real quick with how do I make my house more snake friendly?
Well, the opposite of what I said. No.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Snakes are very urbanized. They've come to understand in a general, evolutionary term that cities and homes and our houses and our driveways and everything is habitable space. You could make it more comfortable for them for sure by honestly doing the opposite. If you have a lot of landscaping, if you have a lot of ground cover, some important things you want to do are not to put things out that are going to be harmful. And the worst thing that we see here is garden netting. People will put up this garden netting to protect their flowers or their vegetables from deer or rabbits or something. And it's a monofilament line that's really fine. And the snakes will try and pass through it, and their head will go through, but then their body will catch, and they'll tangle up and tangle up and tangle up, and it constricts and constricts, and it can actually cut very, very deeply into their skin and into their muscles and organs. It's a very big problem. So not using those things, obviously. Not using rodent poisons. If you have rats, don't do that because that passes right along. If a rat eats poison and the snake eats the rat, the snake is now poisoned. Just be a little more eco-friendly in general. I mean, I know that's very vague, but yeah.
Always.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for bringing me this beautiful little snake.
Yeah, cheers, boys.
Thank you, Jeremy. Keep up the good work. Okay, that's it for this episode of Your Place on the River, which is brought to you by Carriage Key of Woodstock, Georgia, and features Chattahoochee Nature Center, where our mission is to connect people with nature. Each new episode is released the third day of the month. Until our next episode, we want to leave you with 3 things to ponder. A snake's 3 F's for defending itself.
The 3 F's.
The 3 F's.
What are they, Larry?
I'm glad you asked. I would have told you anyhow.
Okay.
First, while a snake can't hear, they can feel vibrations, and they feel something coming. They're going to flee.
Flee.
All righty. And if they don't have time to flee, they're going to freeze. And thanks to their patterns and coloring, helps them blend into the background. Now we call that
camouflage.
Camouflage. And we go walking right by them.
Freeze.
And the last thing they want to do is fight. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if you come across a snake, you have predator eyes. You're way bigger than the snake. So if it strikes out you, it's not trying to say, "Ooh, you're my next meal." Okay. It's fighting for its life. It's trying to defend itself. It's saying, "Don't eat me. Leave me alone." And so what should you do?
Well,
leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
Back off.
They don't want to fight outside their weight category, you know. They're only trying to catch meals.
Yeah.
They want to save their venom.
That's right.
Don't you feel compelled to fight the snake? I say you better flee.
And, of course, this could be mostly non-venomous snakes.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
So just enjoy from a distance.
That's right. Sit back and let them do their thing, which is both for venomous and non-venomous. It's beneficial in rodent control. And
thank you, snakes.
Thank you, snakes.
Now, remember to learn more at any time about Chattahoochee Nature Center and what's happening here, please visit chatnaturecenter.org. That's CHATT naturecenter.org. We also invite you to share any questions, suggestions, concerns, or compliments about our podcast by tweeting us at CNC Nature and use hashtag YPOTR.
This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.